So, Arthur Shelley. I was very fortunate to work with Arthur through my time at Cadbury Craft. He was my boss based in Melbourne and I was in Bourneville in the UK. And we were never in the office at the same time. But amazingly, he was probably the most influential, supportive leader I've ever had. So he's very inspiring. He makes all learning fun. So I hope that's going to translate to all of you today. And thank you, Arthur, for preparing and sharing that with us today. Over to you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Nancy, and welcome everyone. Yes, it's funny how some people you want to stay in touch with and others you don't, right? And that's what communities are about. You don't have to work with everyone to actually stay in touch with them. And Nancy and I remained in contact. It's now more than a decade since I left and almost a decade since you left, Nancy. So very good. She's just gone to mute, so she's not going to answer that. Okay, so please feel free to ask a question anytime in the chat, and we'll try and address those as we go along. I will see them when they come. So let's really get on with it. This is quite experiential because I want you to be able to do this tomorrow in your workplace, and there's no reason why you can't. I'll explain a little bit of the theory. Or the process, more to the point, behind what we're doing. And then we'll go into a shared document and do this. There are other ways to do it. I mean, if you've got a tool like Miro, the former, sort of design, I forget the original name for it now. But if you've got a tool like Miro, you can do this, but you don't need it. I've decided to demonstrate this just using a Google presentation to show you that you don't need to pay for tools, but the paid tools are a bit more professional looking, that's all. So what we're really trying to do here, co-created projects worth doing. The idea of that came from, if you think of TED, ideas worth spreading, right? And I think, we all love TED and TED's a wonderful thing. But the problem is most people get inspired by a TED, but they don't actually do anything. And we wanted to go 2 steps further. We wanted to give you not just an idea, but a collection of ideas and form them into a project that is worth doing, not just worth sharing. So nothing wrong with sharing, and I think that's really good. But we should share ideas in order to take action, and we put actions in place through projects. So that's how it comes together. The other big part of this is conversation. Human beings are social, they interact through conversations, and this little collaborative conversation cycle that I drew up a few years ago is an important part. And when you get into your breakout groups, just be thinking about this, that, we're not in there to advocate a particular position. We're in there to co-create something that doesn't exist yet. And if we share ideas, we can actually create something new through conversations. But the first thing is to acknowledge your differences. You're not there to force your ideas on somebody else. And if you acknowledge that you're going to have differences of perspective, you can both be right, even though they seem opposite. But if you respect each other's perspectives and hear each other out, you can ask questions around those ideas and why they're different and why we see them differently. And what happens as a result of that is you engage in an exploratory conversation rather than sort of telling. You're looking and exploring and listening. And what this does is it exposes you to a much broader range of options so that you can then adapt your thinking with other people's thinking. And when you start listening, thinking, conversing, adapting, you become more capable because you are as powerful as your network. And the act of doing that, you engage in collaboration and then you co-create social value. Now that may be you're saving lives, or it may be you're increasing your profit. Whatever it is, you're creating some sort of sense of value, tangible or intangible. So we're going to go through 3 conversations cycles tonight. Let me show you the overall process. And for some reason, my slide isn't listening to me. Now it's moving. What a conversation structure is about is understanding what you're trying to achieve. And if you are in a conversation, I call this conversations that matter. It's been around a long time, over a decade, when I first wrote a blog about it. You decide what it is that you're trying to achieve, and there are 4 elements that come out of that conversation. The first is there are outputs, there are physical things. You will be recording ideas on a slide. That's an output. It's a physical thing. You can see it, you can share it, you can measure it. How many ideas did we get? But more importantly, other than the outputs, the physical, tangible things that we generate in the conversation, there are the outcomes. How do we feel about it? You might have got a decision, but if people are disengaged by that decision, you've actually had a negative impact on intangible value. So you can have opposites. So what you think is a positive output actually can create a negative outcome. What you want is a positive output and a positive outcome. So, you know, and a set of ideas that you formed into a project, like you will this evening or this morning your time, and the outcomes are people are engaged, they're positive, they like what they're seeing, and they may have even built a relationship with someone that they didn't know before. And, you know, that's not something that you can plan into it, but it is something that can come out the other end. The other 2 things to think about, well, what are the benefits of this? Are we increasing profit? Are we developing? Are we learning? Are we connecting with people? Are we building our network? There's a whole range of benefits that come, and a benefit may also be an output. So, but we highlight the 4 elements because they have different characteristics. But the other aspect of it is, well, who are the beneficiaries? We can have a conversation around something that is generating value for somebody else. So the people in the conversation might not get any immediate benefit other than to feel good about it. But the beneficiaries may be, you know, you're saving lives in a country, or you're contributing to a development in an undeveloped country or something like that. So that's the basic structure of a conversation. What are the 3 conversations that we're going to have tonight? Overall, what we're going to do is we're going to co-create a project worth doing. Well, you're going to do that, and I'm going to sit around and answer your questions. There's 3 key steps that we hope to get through tonight. We may not complete step 3, but the first step is just to create ideas around an improvement option. And there's 5 possibilities, and they were shared with you in the email, but they're also in the document you're going to be working in. The first thing is to create an idea, but not just create any idea, create an idea in a specific structure, and you'll do this in the shared space. Once each person has contributed at least 1 idea in your breakout groups, the breakout group will then look at all of the ideas that they've got, because you'll all be looking at that same shared space in the Google presentation. And you'll cluster them. You'll say, oh, these ideas go together. Those ideas are a bit different. You may cluster them, all the ideas, in one project, or you may say, well, there's a few different themes here. How do we bring those common themes together? And those things go together and those things go together. And I'll demonstrate this to you in a moment, so that you've got a good idea of what it will look like when you get there. At that point, that's step 1 and 2, which happens in the same slide on the Google presentation. If we're traveling well, we may quickly jump back to the main room, have a bit of a talk about that, and then go back in and actually define the priority actions that are required in order to bring that project to life. And then in the real world, when you're doing this tomorrow, hopefully, or sometime this week or this month, tomorrow is the end of this month, isn't it? With the define actions, the idea here is to understand the foundations that you need to put in place in order for that co-created project worth doing to grow legs and to actually get implemented. In the real world, and we won't get here tonight, you would then actually form a project around that and pitch that to your target audience. We're not going to get there tonight. And that's, you know, how to pitch an idea to, you know, a venture capitalist, a corporate, or even an internal sponsor is the subject of another whole conversation. But you can find plenty of stuff on how to pitch. So let's have a look at what that actually looks like in the space that you're going to be working in. So when you go into your collaborative workspace, this is the virtual workspace that is the Google presentation. It's the link to that is in the chat. Don't and also in the email that you received. Don't go there just yet. I want to show you so that you've got a really good idea, because I will not be in the group there with you. It's up to you to then go in and do this together. So let me walk you through. The first 5 slides that are in that shared document are just help slides. If you go, oh, what was the first step again? I can't remember. Just duck up and have a look in those first 5 slides. But then there's one slide that gives you a set of numbers. Depending on which breakout group you are, so here on the left, the breakout group number works on certain slides. So breakout group 1 will do their first 2 steps, steps 1 and 2, that is to create the idea and to cluster them and give the cluster a name on slide 7. And then when they come back to put the actions together for that, they do that in step 8 and on slide 8. And the reason for that is that you've got these common workspaces, but then you can actually see what happens in all of the other groups as well. So you have your own little conversation about what you're doing, and then actually the document is shared with everyone, and you can see the conversations that others had. So this is only an hour, and realistically, that's not quite enough to do the whole thing. When you're doing this, you might, rather than spend 15 minutes in the first conversation and 15 minutes in the second, you might want to give it a half an hour or so and work it over and dig a bit deeper, go over it a couple of times, see if there's any more extra ideas. But for today, I just want to take you through the steps so that you know how to do them, but extend them out a little bit more. So in that first slide for each group, the one that I call the idea slide, it looks like this. And you can edit everything that's in here. So what you want to do is, the first thing to do is to go off and see the list of contexts. There's a community one, there's a sharing one, there's 5 areas that you might want to join, that you want your group to work on. You go in and you pick one of those, copy the title, bring it down here and paste it in here where it says breakout group 1, paste your selected challenge here. So then you go in and you literally, the idea templates are here, where it says overwrite with your own to participate. The colors have particular meaning. You can see that each idea needs to be written in a particular structure. This is really important. If over many years of experimentation, what I have found is if you describe an idea, if you said, who's got an idea? Oh, I think we should do this. It's quite nebulous. But if you use this particular structure to describe the idea, and I might point out the actions that you're going to develop later as well, you start with a verb. The very first word has got to be something that can be done. So it's an action word. Is it review? Is it commission? Is it decommission? Is it, develop? The verb that you choose describes the action that you're taking. Then the next one is an adjective or a description word. If you're going to develop, is it new? Is it old? Is it, or maybe you're going to, instead of develop a new idea, you're going to review an old procedure. So that's the combination of verb, adjective, noun. Very, very powerful. But even that alone, and this is the thing that is most often missing, even that alone, although it has a verb, an adjective, and a noun, an action, a description, and a thing, it doesn't have a purpose. You need to say, well, if I implement this idea, what comes out the other end? What's the outcome? How does that actually help someone? And when each of you write down one idea for the particular context that you've chosen, or maybe a couple, maybe you've got several ideas, just keep putting ideas in. And what you then do is to combine those to say, oh, look, Nancy's idea goes with Michael's, but Arthur's is different. So we'll put that over there. But, Aaron's one is over here. It can go with Nancy's and Michael. So you get these little clusters, and then you give that cluster a name. So I'm hoping that everyone is still fairly well with me. We may get to the action slide and come back. But once you've got your project and you've named it, we might just quickly bring you back to the main room. We'll talk about that a little bit, answer any questions. And then if there's still some time, we could go back and actually create a few actions. But once you've done the first step, you actually get how it works and see it in action. So
let's see it in action. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know why it's giving me a great deal. That's just the structure of the sentences. These are the 5 activities. Sorry, the 5 contexts whether you're going to develop a project. But what I'm going to do now is to go into the document and give you a little demo in there. So I think I have to stop sharing my screen and reshare it. Just bear with me for a moment to pick the actual slide. Now is a good time to actually open the shared document so that you can actually, because you'll be working in this document quite soon. Okay, so this is, Nancy, you can see the shared document, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the shared document. It's basically just a Google presentation. There are the 5 slides. These are the slides that you'll be working on. So if you're in group 1, etc. So you will go to your nominated idea slide with your team in your breakout group. And then you'll say, well, what context? Let me pick a context. I'd say, oh, okay, I'd really like to work on, actions to improve collaboration. Yeah. And you'd copy the whole thing. So I'll go here and I'll say, all right, so our project is actions that you have done to improve collaboration. So I'll say, I have verb facilitated creative conversations to do what? To engage people, to horrify people. And when you do these, you might just want to pull them out so that you can see across here. I think I'm facilitating creative conversations to stimulate learning. Yeah. So that is an action in the structure. Each of you will be doing this at the same time. Don't wait around for each other, but chat with each other. The point of you being in a breakout group is that you share ideas and you bounce them around, etc. So you record that. And then let's say, Nancy did another idea here and that was really related to mine. I'd go, oh yeah, okay. So that goes with this. This idea that Michael did, that's actually a different idea again. So that goes over here. But the idea that Aaron put in, that would be really good. That'll go over here. So you're moving these around once you've actually put the ideas in. And then when you're looking at this, you go, oh, that I'd like to call a, conversations that matter initiative. Give it a name. So I'll say, we'll take a name and we're going to put it in here and we'll kind of call it, conversation initiative. Yeah. And of course, you're talking with each other in your breakout groups the whole time. And then you take those ideas, but that's the second step. We'll come back to the main room. If you get to that stage, you're doing really well, let Nancy know in the chat. If you've got questions, ask me in the chat. And then if we've got all of that right and everyone's going really well, we can come back and say, well, okay, what actions do we need to initiate that? So that's where we are. Nancy, do you want to go to groups or are there any questions at this stage?
No, there's Martin's told a comment about present tense for action rather than facilitated. So facilitating, I suppose it should be, yeah. Yeah. What I was going to say is, I know that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I think the best thing is to experience it and then you'll come back with questions. So I'm only going to give you sort of 15, 16 minutes in your groups, but then we can discuss how we all found it and then see how we might apply it to our own organizations. So just to recap, you go in your groups, you're only in small groups of 3, introduce yourselves and agree which of those contexts you want to choose, and then start writing on the document each of your ideas. Hopefully you've done some prep work and you've already got some ideas on that context. And then when you can see each other's, at least one from each of you, then you can cluster them and have some ideas. I'm going to give you prompts all the way through. But I hope just have a really great conversation and come back and tell us how it went. Is there any questions before I put you in the breakout rooms? And you can come back and ask at any time, anything if you're unsure or you get stuck. Arthur's going to be in the main room the whole time. I'm going to take the silence as a no, so I'm going to open all the rooms and I'll see you back here in about 15, 16 minutes. Okay, bye for now. That was fun. A bit crazy. Let's see if everyone's back. Shall I, while everyone's coming back, shall I share what we did in our group?
Sure.
We were breakout room 3. Let me see. Where's our one? So yeah, we had a bit of trouble with the overwriting all the things. And with the Zoom things, just as you can see. But our project name was the Unstoppable Mayhem Project. Let me just say, if everyone's just coming back in, we'll maybe take it in turns to share our experience. But if you want to write any feedback, comments, questions in the chat while I'm talking, please do. I would love to know how you all found it. So yeah, we decided on how ideas are collected and fed into the innovation projects, innovation pipeline or projects pipeline. We were just thinking it from either way. And we felt we liked the idea of brainstorming. Writing it in the thing was more restrictive. So we almost wanted to do a brain dump of loads of ideas and then try and write it, because that took a bit more skill. So what we put was we would contact team members, request their ideas from a wide range of ideas, or we would research external sources to find novel approaches to what the outcome, to widen horizons and boundary scanning. And then we got a bit nervous, but we, Ian particularly, but create self-managing community that shares ideas and then votes on and decides on the best ideas. So I don't know, feedback welcome, Arthur, if we've understood that correctly, or whether you want to go to another group first and hear from each of them.
Yeah, I don't mind. I think, as you see from that, Nancy, it's messy initially, and that's normal. But you don't need to keep the color coding and everything. That's just to remind people that if they're gonna write an idea down, they've got to have, you know, those 4 things covered. So the action, the descriptor, the noun, and the yeah, Martin has to go, but in a little while. The brainstorming is messy. Now, normally what you do with this is, you know, in a physical situation, everyone would be writing an idea on a sticky note, right? And you'd put them on the wall and then you'd cluster them, and, you know, that works easy in a physical setting. In a setting like Miro, which is, you know, designed as a workplace, as a virtual workplace, you know, if you're paying the license for Miro, you can do it there. But then with an improvisation of a free tool, you know, you can do this process without, you know, the expense of tools. If you were doing it professionally, I'd go out and buy a Miro license. If you were doing it face-to-face, we'd be using sticky notes. But it can work like this.
I think for us, forcing us to think of the outcomes at this point of idea generation was interesting, because we were full of ideas, but maybe not necessarily connecting it to the outcome. But less from me, Michael, and Lorraine, maybe, I don't know if you weren't in the same group, but if I could lean on you, that would be.
Yeah, me and Martin have known each other for, again, 20 years. We used to work together at the Improvement Development Agency, so we've worked together for years. But as always, as Martin always keeps telling me, I always sort of show him new technology or things he hasn't really seen before. So he's like, oh, this is quite good. So again, we would spend a lot more time probably on the conversation, but the structure really sort of helped. And Martin, you can jump in as well, you can unmute yourself. But I think working in previous projects, normally it's a project manager decides what the actions are and the outcomes are. And I've always been the emphasis that the team should do stuff on it, and having this structure where everyone can see, everyone can brainstorm, everyone can come up with ideas, everyone can refine it. Even though it's messy and we've only spent 15 minutes on, this is going to be more constructive, and also everyone's going to go away feeling that they're part of a project rather than being the project's being done to them. And you get new ideas and new ways. And so we didn't really get, we did a lot more chatting about it, and we were trying to add stuff up as we were going along.
What group were you?
We were slide 9, so we only got into the more the conversation stuff. But this idea of actually a simple structure to help put it into place, and also now everyone's working remotely, as you've mentioned, Arthur, like Miro, but Google Documents, you can even do it now on like Office 365 Word documents, or Miro, Whiteboard. Doesn't matter what you've got, it's not difficult to do this, and having a structure actually helps put it into place in some way rather than just going completely free for all.
Can I just add to it with Michael there? I was starting from a very low base on this, and I think the critical thing was to explain co-creation as this tool, because inviting people to do this for the first time, they're going to think it's nothing more than another information share. Mike might use the phrase, you know, if you're pushing, it won't work. So the point of trying to do tasks was to say, no, this is to physically create something. It's a tool just like the computer, the phone, whatever, not just a chat room. And that's why I was saying about allocating smart objectives, who's doing what and when and why and all this, and the outcomes and the outputs. I think was really, really helpful, because then we can break it down to bite-sized chunks. So yes, we want to coordinate activity across a diverse organization. Is that just chat rooms? No, let's work on documents that everyone uses, and suddenly we get a framework, if you like, a reference point of what it is we're trying to do.
That's a really, really important point, and it ties up with something Michael said as well, and something that somebody put into the chat all at the same time. What you're doing is you're making the connections between the people to interact through conversation, but you're visualizing that conversation as you have it. And that inclusion, as Michael was saying, you know, of everyone being involved and everyone having the chance to put an idea down, it creates a lot of ownership around the project. You know, instead of, you know, as Michael said, being told what to do, you could say, I've got some ideas that could add to this. And for people who are not so confident, you know, that's a really powerful thing. And that's the co-creation piece. It's amazing how much value you can create really quickly. You did this for 15 minutes and there's some really good ideas here. But not only are there good ideas, there's good ideas clustered together to form little themes, which can be, you know, either sub-projects or projects in a program or an independent project, and you can see aligned stuff that's going on. So that's the power of it. You get the synergies of the visual and the conversation.
I think the visual aspect's really important. I like color coding. I can see the sense, you know, and then if you translate this to other diagrams, so the flow of it, or even the sequential stuff. Yes, we all want to do this, but where do we start?
Yeah.
Let's hear from, thank you, Martin and Michael. That was great to hear from you. I think there's another group. Lorraine, are you happy to share your experience? What went on in is it breakout room 1?
Yeah, so I was with Jackie and Aaron, and I think even the talking around how to do the stuff felt inclusive. So we lost our way a little bit, I think, but once we got our head around what to actually do, and from being a change manager myself, that inclusivity, I think what we've all talked about today is a really important part, so everybody feels bought into the process. I do like the color coding side of things. It gives a structure. I work with a lot of engineers, so they do like structure. They don't like, and you've heard me say this before, Nancy and Michael, they don't like the fluffy, woolly stuff. So if that gives a bit of structure about how to do it, then there's a consistent way of capturing ideas. As a qualified teacher as well, I think the color coding side of things is easy for those that can use it, but from an inclusivity perspective, we do actually have quite a few people that are colorblind in the engineering world. So that could cause even more confusion. There
are safe colours, Lorraine, you can use.
Yeah.
I know
but
that.
maybe a table, that's what I was thinking, to sort of, not to restrict the language at all, but I was thinking like, I don't want to miss a column like outcomes, but I don't know, that might help with that sort of inclusive point, Lorraine.
I mean, I like the idea and I like the structure. I think it would depend on the audience you're with. I've just read a book by Matthew Said around cognitive diversity. So, you know, as Arthur was saying in his introduction, that having different pool of ideas of people coming together is great. But do we lose some of that creativity if we give them too much of a structure, for example?
That's a really, really important point, Lorraine. And what I've tried to do with this, and I've experimented with this, you know, sort of in the room together, virtual, you know, you're not a guinea pig audience here. It's been done several times. And actually, just on Friday, I did it with a group of very process orientated people in Singapore. And they just didn't get it. They really struggled because they wanted much more structure. Whereas you go to a group of creative types, and I've done this with creative types, you know, they don't want any structure at all. So what you need is a framework, as you were saying, that can adapt to the audience, and you can give them the steps and guidance. But if you over control it, you lose that sense of synergy and emergence. You know, the people aren't bouncing off each other. And that's why, as Martin was saying, it's really important to get the conversation and the visual and the process kind of harmonizing as you go through. And that varies with audience.
How might you all use it? I was just thinking myself, just maybe not even for projects, but an addenda. You know, just getting everyone for next week's community meeting to all have an influence before, making sure that they not just review it and turn up, that they actually contribute an idea to it. I mean, that for me would make, I'm sure, next week's meeting much more useful. I don't know. What about anyone else? How else might you use it?
I know for me, helping people run communities, one of the biggest struggle is they don't have a clear purpose. And helping one identify the clear purpose and the objectives towards it, and then how they're going to go about it, because so often they come up with quite a woody idea, they probably invite the wrong people and they wonder why it doesn't work. So because there's no clear objectives towards what they're working towards, why anyone would want to join. And that's my biggest challenge I have with a lot of groups I work with, is that they don't know what they want, they don't know who wants it, they've got no real idea. So having something like this could really make a big difference to me, having a structure take them through. It's part of it.
Lorraine's got a comment. Nancy?
So I think the way that I probably look to using something like this, straight away I've got to write a set of objectives for my team, and it'd be really good for them to put in some ideas as to, you know, what do they want to work on, for example, and then I've got that motivational driver from the team. It's not been led by me, and they're all bought into the strategy of where we go for our next kind of set of objectives. So no, I like it. It's a toolbox for knowledge management, and I like that. Thank you.
Nancy, can you just drag right down to the very, very last couple of slides? I think it was Jackie that said something about an example. Oh, I didn't put it in. That's a shame. I knew we'd be really tight for time today. But what I will sometimes do, and it's in the PowerPoint deck that I think
I'll get that up. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is an example there, and it's a real example of dealing with COVID in Moscow, and a group of Moscow people. You see slides 8, 9, and 10, Nancy. So this is a real example. Just go to 7, sorry, go to 7. So that was the idea slide. They went in. This is a real output. So they did that. We'll jump to number 8. And they clustered them. And then when they clustered them, you can see there are a whole bunch of things. We said, well, what are they? And they said, well, these are retailer things. These are logistics things. These are consumer things that can happen. So then they named that. They then named that like the retailer project. Go to the next slide. Thanks, Nancy. And then what they realized is actually even those retailer ideas actually were two separate projects. So then what they did was they say, well, in that retailer area, there's this central logistics project. And then even within the retailer, there's this other thing which can happen at the local stores. And they created that, and they did it in about 35 minutes. So what they then had were two clear sets of actions. And by the way, this is the next step, step 3. So that what's on the right-hand side, that what's on the left are the ideas, and what's on the right-hand side are the actions that can be taken in order for that project to be activated, which would be the next thing that you would do in the real world. So I know that we're tight for time, Nancy, so I'll shut up.
No, great. I think it's amazing, and what you've covered virtually in your evening for us is incredible. So thank you very much, Arthur, for sharing this with us. And with your permission, I will share the recording and the slides with everyone who has attended. And if you found it useful, all we ask is you let the speaker know. Let Arthur know if you apply it. He'd love to continue the conversation with you. Tell us in the group. We meet sort of every other month with a different idea or experience from another practitioner, and if it's helpful, we'll keep going. So from looking at the results, just did a really quick poll there. Obviously everyone that voted has said it was helpful or extremely helpful. So thank you very much for being open to trying this with us today. We really appreciated it, and I think it's definitely given us food for thought to try. Our next webinar is on the 17th of November, where we look at playful principles. So how do we make meetings more productive and more fun? And we've got a guy who specializes in Lego Serious Play, which we don't apply through the webinar, but it's the same methodology and science behind it. So join that one. I'll send you a link to that afterwards. But if there's any other questions, Father, do continue the conversation. You've got his contact details. If not, we hope you'll all join us again at another meeting or session. One day, Michael, in person in the pub, we would like, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we would, yes. That'd be good.
Thank you, everyone, for participating, and see you again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.